Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon. I see there's a good few of you logging on there, so that's great. It just takes a couple of minutes for people to log on, so we'll just take our time before we commence. But our webinar this afternoon is going to be presented by Meabh Ring, and the webinar is, hi Meabh, the webinar is called Getting My Product Noticed in the Market, which of course is extremely a good one to have. So there'll be a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so Meabh will answer any of your questions. I can call them out for us if you'd like to type them into the Q&A or to the chat box, and we'll deal with them at the end of the presentation. So I think I'll hand you over to Meabh there now. Thanks, Meabh, if you want to go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Mary. Thanks for looking after me. What I'm just going to do is just get my my presentation up so you can see my slides. My name is Meabh Ring, and thank you very much to Mary and Emer for asking me along to join the webinar series. They've had some really good topics and themes over the last couple of months, so it's really great to be part of it. My background I started out in product development. I created a sportswear product. Then I went into retail. I had my own craft shop, and then later on I moved into wholesaling craft for other people. I would have done a lot of the international craft shows and gift shows. I would have done Secaucus and Lombard, as well as our own showcase. And I suppose in the last couple of years, I worked a lot with craft design gift startups, and as well as some retail clients. So Emer and the lads asked me to have a chat with you guys, just to give you some of my insights and feedback on, how you would get your product noticed in the marketplace by the consumer. And they were kind of saying, do it for maybe earlier startup, just newer companies in the first maybe 3 years. Because in the first couple of years, you don't always have the resources or the funds, to create a big brand or to do a marketing campaign. So it's just to, maybe it's just give some feedback on what I have seen working in the marketplace. So getting your product noticed by consumer is really getting your product remembered, and when it is remembered, therefore will be purchased. And one of the things I'd like to do today is I want you to have a look at your product from the consumer's perspective, not just your perspective, even though that is extremely valid and important, but just look at it from the consumer's perspective, because the consumer doesn't always have, a degree in goldsmithing or know about sort of the intricacies of, furniture design. So just from their perspective, I know I was looking at previous webinars, and Bernie McCoy did a really, really good one about, where you're coming from. So what I was saying to Emer, let's have a look at it from where the consumer is coming from and what the consumer might think. So what I will say in the following slides is, let's look at gift craft design products from the consumer's perspective. And one thing that will jump out in my head as well is that while I have worked in product design and I know how important the making and the creative process is, I really do, it's also really important to look at your craft design enterprise as a business. It can't just be a hobby. You have to apply some business principles to it. And just in previous webinars, I remember Aidan Bodkin said that it's brilliant to have fabulous designs, but you also have to kind of have a business head and approach to it. So basically what I'm going to cover in the following slides is AIDA, and that's the psychological process of how a consumer makes a decision on whether to buy your gift craft design product or not. AIDA stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. We'll do another slide on it. The other thing I wanted to look at is what's a product from the consumer's perspective, not from your perspective, but from the consumer's perspective. And I would suggest that there's 3 key components to a product. First one is functional, the physical product, the visual attractiveness of the product. So that's one, the actual product. The next part of a product is the story, the emotional part of the product, and that's really important for the gift craft design sector. And the third part of a product is the price and value. Now, price doesn't equal value. It is it's the monetary appreciation we might put on your gift craft or design product. And maybe then I'll just give you some actionable ideas or exercises where I've seen other people, you know, apply those principles. So what is a product, and why it's really important to look at your product as, you know, as a technique, as, you know, as a set of skills, as a reaction to, you know, influences and ethoses. When a consumer sees your products, in many cases they see, they feel, they value, they appreciate, they experience. It's a whole set of emotions. It's not just, oh, isn't that a beautiful piece of ceramics, you know, fired at X degrees. It's, you know, that makes me feel happy, that brings me joy, that would be beautiful in my house, or that would be a beautiful gift. So it's kind of an emotional thing. So the consumer, get noticed by the consumer. Lots of people say to me, you know, what does the consumer want and who is the consumer? But like, demystify the consumer. They're not some magical creature that you can't find, like they're off with the unicorns. A consumer is your friends, your neighbors, your family, your consumer. You go out and you buy things. And consumers buy products that they like, that they can relate to, and that they can afford. And in many cases, the consumer purchase when there's a purchase occasion. And what that means is that it's Mother's Day, it's birthday, it's Christmas. The final quarter of every year is the biggest gift-giving season. It's a treat to yourself. It's upstyling your home. It's a thank you. We've all gone out to shops and said, gosh, I have to find something for the babysitter, or I have to say thank you to somebody X, Y, and Z. So that purchase occasion is important. And like, I know this time of year, lots of Irish are along the west of Ireland, probably sheltering from Storm Ellen right now. But, you know, if you've gone to Cliffs of Moher, or if you've gone to the Old Headcombe Sale, chances are you're looking for a gift that might reflect the environment or the heritage of the places that you visit. And also the consumer, who are, you know, our friends, neighbours, and ourselves, when we buy a gift or when we buy craft as a gift, it's a very emotional thing, because they say things like, I saw this and I thought of you. And you as the receiver should be saying, well, what did you think? You know, so I'm just kind of flagging that, you know, the product that you create in your gift craft design enterprise, look at it now from the consumer's perspective of what it means to them. And to get noticed is to get a sale, and consumers buy through direct sales, through your website, through retail outlets, and through exhibitions. A really good, secure, and confident tool used by consumers is word of mouth. If someone buys a beautiful necklace and their friend admires it, it's a referral. It's like, where did you get that? Where did you buy it? So happy customers always talk up a product. Unhappy customers, you know, that's post-purchase dissonance. They'll talk you down, or they might even just be embarrassed that they purchased the product and they won't talk about it full stop. Know your customers. It's all about research, but you know, your customers are, you know, browsing around towns, cities, villages, looking for nice things. They see something that makes them smile. So, you know, kind of watch the consumer trends. What are they looking for? But also remember that the consumer is bombarded by messages. Like there's advertising everywhere we go. It's in our streets, it's on our phones, it's on our laptops. So your message has to be interesting and clear. And I would have noticed a lot now, a strong current message is the Made Local campaign, because, you know, just of everything that we've been through the last couple of months, people are kind of saying, gosh, you know, it's important to buy from local businesses, to support local shops. And, you know, that's where the Design Crafts Council campaign, Made Local, you know, is also getting quite, you know, a good traction. So let's talk about the psychology of the consumer decision-making process. And this is AIDA. AIDA describes the basic process by which people become motivated to act on external stimulus, demonstrating the way that successful selling happens and sales are made. This technique is also known as the hierarchy of events. So basically, it's awareness, it's interest, it's desire, and then action. Awareness is, this is my craft design product. This is where I am. Interest, let me tell you more about it. Let me give you the story, let me give you the ethos, let me give you the background. Desire, gosh, the interest of story, the brand and functionality, it's great, I want it. And the action is you take out your credit card and you buy it. So that's the funnel of AIDA: awareness, interest, desire, and action. So from a consumer's perspective, you know, a big sign like sale can get awareness, interest, shoes, do I want shoes, do I want shoes, desire, they were €100, they're now down to 50, action, will I buy? So that's the kind of psychological process for the customer decision-making process. So it's a funnel, and I would say to you is that, you know, you have a sign up saying Meabh Ring jewelry, and then tell me the story, make me want to wear this. It'll make me look good, it'll last longer, it's an investment piece, and action can, you know, make me buy it. A to A is a process. You know, it starts with awareness and it fiddles down. You can get everyone seeing your sign on your door. The next is get them interested enough to move into your, you know, your shop or the craft fair. Desire to make them say, I prefer this wall hanging over someone else's wall hanging. And action then is to buy. And then the post-purchase experiences, I feel loyal. I feel something about this designer maker, that I've met them, that I really value their product, or I really value what they stand for. So that's the AIDA process. To get noticed, you should give prompts and nudges to the consumer in the process. So they're not going to know what the interest is unless you tell them. So if you're standing next to the product, you'll talk about the product, or better again, if you're not standing next to the product, that you would have a swing tag or a tent card, or you would have kind of an artist bio next to the product to say this product was inspired by, using only materials handmade in, you know, a bit about the maker. So you decide what information you give to the consumer, and that's your branding, really. That's the story and the information that you feed in to say, yes, this is a product, and this is the interest and desire. So that's the kind of AIDA process. So what I would say to you is have a look at your product from the customer's perspective. For customers,
just for a minute there, can I just interrupt you for a second?
yeah.
Would you maybe move a little bit closer? There's a terrible whining noise in the background. I don't know what it is. Now we can hear you, but just very, very in the background. So maybe if you come a bit closer, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Meabh.
Do you want me to go back over the slides, Mary, or keep going?
I think it's okay. Yeah, no, that's much better now. We can hear you much better there.
Super.
Thanks, Meabh. Okay.
So, so have a look at it from the consumer's perspective. There is a need recognition. I have to buy a birthday present, or I've done up my bedroom and I would like, you know, new furniture. So there's a need recognition. So that's the purchase occasion. The consumer searches. They search it on shops. They have a look online all the time now, very much so. They evaluate the options that are available to them, and that evaluation process is important because they will not only evaluate you on the product or the price, they'll also evaluate you on your branding, what you stand for, what your inspiration is, what your designs are. They'll make a choice, which is the purchase, and then there's the post-purchase evaluation. Do I feel really happy? Do I feel confident? Do I like, you know, the outcomes that I have had from purchasing this particular product? So on your side, the maker side or the marketer side, the key things you need to funnel through are the awareness, interest, desire, and action. Let them know that you're a maker in their area or in their region. Interest, give them the story, the brand, background. Desire, you want the consumer to say, I would love this, you know, vessel. I would love this tabletop. I would love this jewelry. I would love this tweed jacket. You get them to want it, and the action then is the purchase. So, why do consumers buy? We said there's a purchase occasion, there's a need, a want, or we create a need and want. I mean, you know, without being sort of morbid, we never thought we'd like, you know, well-made linen face masks, and now that's a very common product that you would see in some of the gift shops. So there's a purchase occasion, and then the craft product is perceived as having three key components. The first one is that it's visually attractive, functional, the physical product. And it has to look good, because nobody's going to buy a wall hanging or a ceramic or a jacket that it doesn't look good. It's just not something consumers do. They like nice things. And also the functionality is really important. If you're going to buy a necklace, the necklace has to close properly. If you're going to buy a throw for the couch, it has to wash in the machine if the label says it's machine washable. So that's the first one, is the functional physical product. The second one is the emotional connect. How does the consumer emotionally connect with your product? How do they feel about your product? How do they like you? And that's branding, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And the third component is the consumer values it and it can afford it and will want to pay for the price that is asked. And that process may take less than a second, or if it's a high involvement process, it'll take longer, because if it is something like your name has to be on the wall plaque, or you're getting a stone carving or engraving, you're part of the creative process, so your involvement is part of the creative process. So let's have a look at the three key components, and it has to be visually attractive and functional. And even things like, if you're making ceramics, the base of the ceramics has to be sanded so it doesn't scratch surfaces. People have to like it. You buy first with your eye. And in a world that we're living in now, having a wonderful product is essential. But what also is very essential is that you would have good images of your product, because in many cases you're not often there, that they're going to see it via a website, or they'll see it via a shop site, or via social media. So what I'm saying is, like, you're consumers yourselves, and when you see something nice, how you react to it. And that's the attention awareness part of AIDA. From the consumer's perspective, as I said, your product has to be functional, that it will do what it says it does. If it is, free from skincare, it's got to be free from. And I will expect that I'm able to use it, that I'm able to wear it, that I'm able to, for it to be functional. So that's important to remember. And I just go back to the importance of very good photography. And I know for new businesses, you don't always have the funds to have, to have excellent photography. But maybe, find a local photographer, barter with them, talk with them, because if you're not there in person, if your product isn't there in person, your photographs needs to convey the quality, the style, and the capture what the product does. Images do tell a story, so it's really worth investing in good images if you don't have them. And also in your images, make help them understand how I can use it. That if it is in a vase, show me how the vase might look on a table. If it's a chopping board, having cheese or grapes on the chopping board. If it is a piece of jewelry, and just my samples there of Brina Kelly and Shodine, it's like you say, well, look, this is a lovely necklace to wear with a black dress. So the physical product is it has to make me feel and look and experience something positive. And even some of the words like I like it, and even the ad that's on the radio at the moment for Made Local, it says, be a local champion. Everyone wants to be a local champion. So visually attractive and functional from the retailer's perspective. Now, some of you may be selling in shops, some are selling through your own outlet or through through trade fairs. But for a shopkeeper, when they're looking at a product, they want to say, well, when I look at this product, it'll fit into the other products I have in the shop. So if you're a shopkeeper and a lot of your products are, have cladders or have, Celtic designs, you might say something, a wall hanging that is extremely, contemporary or avant-garde or Art Deco. You might say, no, that's not my target market. So all shopkeepers have a kind of a curated feel about what works for them and what won't work for them. Also, a shopkeeper will say something like, what does this product say about me? Does it say I'm stylish? Does it say I'm informed? Does it say I'm educated? Does it say I'm eco-friendly? That's a huge trend at the moment, sustainable gifting. Does it say I'm economically conscious? The kind of campaign that's around at the moment about, buying locally made products. So that's the same motivation as buying a brand and a label. And beautiful, attractive products also feed into the word of mouth for a shop. So if you have a beautiful product in the entrance of the door, a lot of shopkeepers call that a hero product or a drama product, so that it sets the tone. If you have an amazing basket, handmade locally, using Irish, reeds, it sets the tone for everything else that goes into the shop or what the consumer experiences around the shop. But the same assumptions apply to your own craft stand or a show that you go to or a website that you're selling from. And I would also say as well, from my experience being a retailer, is that consumers buy first with their eyes. Like a bowl is a bowl. Like I remember being on the shop floor and someone saying they wanted to buy a gift and they were thinking of a tabletop bowl. And I was saying, well, what about a wooden bowl? What about a glass bowl? And the consumer was just looking at me going, I just want a bowl, So sometimes we get very bogged down in the disciplines we work with. So just look at it from the consumer's perspective. It's something beautiful that goes on the tabletop that holds products. And they don't necessarily evaluate between the materials used. So how can you as a business address that first part of what is a product? And I have very flippantly said there, be brilliant at making. I know it takes years to be brilliant at making, but always strive to make a really good product because you can't be faulted then. Really good product, you can't be faulted. Make sure it's functional, like kind of back to what I said, if it's a necklace, make sure it ties. If it's a butter knife, make sure it cuts butter. If it's machine washable, make sure it is machine washable. Have excellent photography, because you might not be able to place the physical product in front of the consumer, at a show or in a shop. And if you are at a show and shop, have a great display. Let people look and see how the product might be used at home, or how it might be worn, or what it might look like. And what you're saying to the consumer is that this is for you. You can own this. This is something you can take away. So that's the physical, functional, visual product. The next thing the consumer likes to look at is the emotional connect. Now, this is branding. This is the story. And sometimes people say, oh, I know how to make the product, but I'm not sure about branding. It's kind of hard to fake branding, because a lot of designers and makers, you have such interesting backstories anyway. You've always wanted to work in textiles, or you've always wanted to work in ceramics. So you can't actually make it up. It's just you haven't always put the story out there or perfected your story. And when a consumer buys your product, what they want to do is know a little bit about your story. Now, you don't have to tell them anything commercially sensitive or private about your life or anything like that. But what you would tell them is like, this is why I was inspired. This is the experience or the life experience I had. I've always been interested in Celtic mythology, or I've always been interested in Irish poetry. So therefore that has fed in to the designs I have used and made. And what you mean about emotionally connect and branding is that the consumer has developed a sort of an affection for you, that they kind of want to know, well, Meabh Ring made earrings, now she's made table linen, so that they kind of like you. They kind of want to know what next and what you've done, and they want to talk about you to their friends and their families as well. So this is the second component of a product, which is the emotionally connect component. So as I said, it's the story, it's the brand, it's the feeling. What does the craft say to the consumer? If they purchase it, where display it? And so what I would be kind of saying to you is, how do you as the maker romance it? Now, romance it sounds kind of airy-fairy, but what I'm saying is, like, don't just say I make it, just say I was inspired to make it because of, I'm influenced by. Give them that backstory, because they are genuinely interested in that, in that, that part of the creative process. So, almost like train yourself to say, well, look, here's 3 sentences I could say if I ever get asked about what it is that I do. And the more you say it, the more confident you'll get, the more natural it'll come to you. You know, it's just practice and say it and see what kind of reaction you get. This is the kind of information you would have on your swing tag. You know, in a shop you have a card hanging out of your product, or it will be on your tent card, or it will be on your About You page. Tell me about it. You know, tell the story, and it just gives an awful lot of authenticity and credibility to your product. And people sometimes feel quite different to a product after they've connected, they've read that emotional connect. And as I said, lots of designers and makers have it already, they just haven't put it down on paper. And it's just the inspiration, the rationale, the origins, and you decide, as I said, what information you give them. You don't have to give them where I live or what I do. You decide what kind of information you give them. I mean, that picture there is that, you know, that lady's using horsehair, you know, with her ceramics. So it's the value and the ethos that informs the purchase decision-making process. And this is branding. Like, this is the beginning of your branding. Some of you might have a very clear understanding of what your branding is, but some of you may not. So this is kind of now what I would say to you is start this process, start the story, give sentences and give words to your physical creative product. Because if I'm the consumer, I need to, or a retailer, and I have been, that I need to see and read and understand your story when I'm considering to purchase you or not. And the story can be anything from, you know, it's handmade, the training, the inspiration, the heritage, it's unique, or it's Irish, or it's not Irish, it's Asian, whatever it is. And consumers like to buy from people they relate to and people they aspire to be. And the thing about sort of creative products, it's very hopeful. You know, people find creative work very inspiring and hopeful. So you're already sort of, you're already in a kind of a positive sector. So it's, you know, gift giving is a very happy experience for both parties. If you're worried or concerned or saying, gosh, I don't know where to start with this branding or this emotional connect, look at what others are doing, not to ape them or not to copy them, but to say, look, this is a complementary product or a peer product. I like what they do. This is how they describe themselves. Start with Design Ireland. Just look at how they describe themselves. I'm based here in Cork, and at the moment now we have a thing called Cork Craft Month. And they had a video campaign with like 5 words of what craft means to you. And again, it's just really interesting to see what other people, how other people describe their work or how they describe their craft. And it can be really fun as well. I mean, it was quite serious, but some of the ones, you know, was like, it's messy, it's full of mistakes, it's heartbreak, you know, but the end product is beautiful. Also, don't just look in Ireland, you know, even though Ireland is fabulous, but, you know, we're quite small. Look at the UK, look at Denmark. There's a lovely studio in London called Coppets Arts. You know, just have a look at their website and look at, you know, maybe similar disciplines or similar ideas and see what words they use. What I would say though, because I'm only like touching the surface, I'm only, you know, just, you know, trying to get things together, is that there was a really super webinar there in June. I'm sure a lot of you saw it already, about creating brands that grow. Rob Gray did it. It's so worth having a look at that again, because, you know, he actually says, you know, tell me your story in 6 words. It's pretty hard to do, but start now, because it will come to you. And if you have those words thought about now, when you do have the budget to go to a brand developer or graphic designer, it makes the whole process a lot easier and quicker. So definitely have a look at that webinar. And again, I'm just showing you a sample there from Design Ireland. As I said, there's another example, a lovely designer artist here in Cork, Anne Harrington-Rees, and she talks about the forms and the materials that she uses. And again, the more you talk about it, the more you explain, and the wider consumer becomes involved in the stories. So, you know, I just can't go on about how important it is to, you know, the physical product, the physical making of a product is the first part. The next part of the product is your branding, your story, your authenticity. It's unique to you. No one can copy it. No one can be you. It's active, it's ever changing, it's dynamic, and, you know, share your story. And it's also fierce interesting for media, like for, you know, print media, for TV media. because it's a lovely story, and just be consistent. Don't flip flat, because then you're not believable. So what I would say to you when you're trying to address this part of the consumer's perception of your business and of your product, draft 100 words of what it is you are. It's that 3 to 5 sentences. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what my work is about. And this will so feed into and help you with all your branding and your physical branding material. And it's the creative content that you will need for your website as you're developing it. So constantly think about it. Just don't think you have it done once. Constantly think about it, because it does evolve and change and move with you. And this is branding. This is sometimes people say to me, "Maybe, what's a brand? Like, what's branding? I hear about it all the time." And branding is the ability to influence customer behavior. So that's back to awareness, interest, and desire. You're creating interest and desire, which will lead to a sale. And if you have a beautiful product and you've given them a really good story about it, you're influencing the consumer. You're getting them to click with you. You're getting them to kind of understand what you're about. You're giving them a clarity of offer. You're giving them a reason to buy you. Yes, you might be twice the price of a mass-produced vase or bowl, but here's where she trained. This is how she makes. This is what he was inspired by. That's all, for many consumers, more important than price. It's the story that goes with it. So that's branding. It's that lovely rationale story, and it's quite emotive, and it's really, really important. One thing I'll just really quickly touch on, because it comes up a bit, is naming your product. So I could be Meabh Ring Designs, and this is the Druid collection. Don't just pick names that are out of your head. The names have to mean something. So you dig back into your branding. So if you have a product collection that you're launching in 2021, don't call it the fuchsia collection if you don't know what a fuchsia looks like. I know that sounds silly, but it's just that names are very emotive. I remember dealing with a jeweler, and she had loads of jewelry at a show, and she named one necklace the Lady Mary necklace. Downton Abbey was big at the time, and she sold so much more because it was a very elegant necklace. There was a bit of Art Deco in the design. But my point is that a name can add value, but it can't just be plucked out of the sky. It has to mean something, and it did mean something because that necklace was inspired by sort of Art Deco designs. So that's the emotional part of the product. And what I would also say is that for SMEs, particularly in the gift, craft, design sector, people are really important in the branding. You as a person. Now, you don't have to be a celebrity or anything like that, but you're the maker, and you're really interesting. You're the designer, and you're really interesting to them. Like so they'll want to maybe talk to you. They'll want to, they want you to reply to emails. So, the emotional part of the branding is really important. And don't rely only on your words, because even after I buy your beautiful woolen throw, I still might want a swing tag to tell me the story again, so I can share it with a friend, or I can remind myself that this is where I got it, and this, where I bought it. And also, can I just say that craft and design doesn't belong to the hard sell school of products. The consumer either wants it or they don't. Like, you can't flog a beautiful piece of ceramic or jewelry, or a basket to someone that doesn't want it. People will click with products that are crafted or made or designed and has an emotional ethos, that gives it value. So you don't have to be in hard sell. You're in the wrong sector, and I'm sure that is quite obvious to you all. So the second part, as I said, is the emotional connect. So it's vitally important to have that story. Everyone else is doing it. Food does it. Tourism does it. Give a story, and that story, that emotional connect, is reflected in the packaging, the website, your point of sale, etc. And you have a look at what others are doing, but don't ape it. So that's the second part of the product as a component, which is the emotional branding side. And third and final component to a product is the value, price, the monetary attribute that we give to a product. They all link in with each other. If a product is beautiful, we love it to have a beautiful story or background and branding. And then we love to know what price is, and we evaluate it all together. And the price is the monetary value we attach, or the consumer attaches to the product. And the consumer makes this decision based on their experiences. So if I think most candles cost 17 to 20 euros, when I see a candle for 27 euros, I go, God, why is that a little bit more expensive? But then if I see the branding, that it was handmade with love and care, and it was the perfumery trained in Grasse in France, and go, oh, well, it's even better than the other candles I've seen for 17 to 20 euros. So the consumer makes their evaluation. But if you're slightly more expensive, what I would say to you is make sure your brand reflects why you're different to maybe a common, or common is the wrong word, a competitor pricing. You're a little bit more expensive because you use a different material, because you use whatever you use. And again, that can be reflected in your story, which is the second part of the product. Now, price is a huge topic. I won't get through it. And again, I would say last week, Tracy Gilbert and Donal went through pricing. Definitely, if you haven't seen this, it's definitely worth looking at, because they give markups and that and all that sort of thing. So definitely have a look at that. What I would say, however, when you're talking to the consumer and to get noticed by the consumer and by retailers, give your price straight away. Don't let them guess your price. You have to give them your price. If you don't, they think it's you're trustworthy or you're hiding something. And don't be shy about your price. If your candle is 27 euros, just say it is. Don't let them guess or wonder or ponder. And the other thing I would also say is that some consumers that you will come across will absolutely love your product. They love it physically, the functionality of it, they love the branding, but they might not have the money. But they might have the money at a purchase occasion. They might say, well, look, I can't afford it now, but my 40th, I'm definitely going to get it. I can't afford it now, but if I change jobs, I might get it. So it's still worth presenting your product and your brand to people. Just because they don't have the money and they can't purchase it now, they might be able to purchase it another time. So it's just that kind of positive, spin on it. Or they might say, look, I'm only going to spend 300 euros a year on jewelry. I've already spent it. I'm going to wait till next year. So, but you can still be on their radar, and they can still be a target market for you. As I said, I'm just flagging that product pricing that Bernie and Tracy did there last week. Definitely worth looking at for pricing. And again, I would just say never ever compete with a retailer or your website. Have price the same. If it's 50 euros in the shop, it has to be 50 euros from your website, your social media, or at your craft fair. You kind of will undermine people if you start charging different prices, cheaper prices, and the consumer expects it to be the same price. Again, I'll fly through this because I'm conscious of the time, but Tracy Gilbert covered this. Cost plus pricing, that's your time with your raw materials. Competitor pricing, and again, that's very hard to do. You can't be the same as everyone else if you're different, but at least be aware of what your competitor might be charging, so that if they say, oh, that's slightly more expensive than I thought, you're able to say to the consumer, I'm slightly more expensive because I use X, Y, Z. And also just kind of bear in mind that if you're going through shops legally have to charge 23%. So if your product is being sold at 100 euros in a shop, 23% of that goes to the Department of Finance. There's no compromise there. And just to be aware of it, you might not need to be VAT registered, so you don't have to think about it, but the shop person has to think about it. And the monetary value of that we put on gifts, very few people would wrap up a 50 euro in a ribbon and give it to you. You might do it as a joke, but gift giving is so emotive. And so when you give a gift, sometimes you're not just celebrating the person, you're celebrating nature, you're celebrating heritage, you're celebrating meaning and involvement. And so, people don't buy gifts just for the monetary value, they buy because of the meaning value. So again, I go back to kind of the second component, which is your story and your price. Now, I just picked this graph off MBA School, and only because they put cost as 1/6 of the consumer value decision. So I know people are price sensitive and I know people want a cheaper price, but what I'm saying is that if you're competing in price alone in craft and design, it's not really a good place to start. So I would say compete on product beauty and compete on branding, which is your story, and not on price. So how to address this, say actionable outcomes, I would say make sure the product is communicated in terms of times taken, how long it takes, the materials used, your skill set, your inspiration, your ethos. Make sure price is consistent, said that already. Communicate how the consumer is involved, because if I'm involved in the design, you know, if my name goes on it, or I wanted this shape or this size, explain all that, because if you have to have 3 meetings with, you know, for a fitting to get, you know, a dress, or to get you know, a basket made, or to get a piece commissioned for you, you know your time is precious. So by gosh, you know that the craft maker or the designer will charge. Make sure the actual product is supported by the brand, that you're able to say that this is the story. And again, have your work clearly priced, because if you force a consumer to ask how much is something, you might embarrass them. It's almost the same logic as saying, do you have this dress in my size? And they'll say, well, what size are you? So when you say, well, how much is this? And you say it's €100, you might embarrass the consumer because they might not have that money. So if you have everything up front, your beautiful product, your beautiful branding or story or a swing card with the price on it, I don't even need to ask you a question. My brain as a consumer can process the decision-making process. And also I'll just say, remember, the consumer may not purchase now, but wait for a purchase occasion. They'll wait for Father's Day, or they'll wait for you know, a Christmas or something like that. But again, it's great to, back to AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, and action, that you're still creating the awareness and the interest, so when the purchase occasion does come up, you're in a position to sell them the product. So pricing is very much part of the, you know, physical product and emotional product. And there's lots of assumptions. If the consumer sees that it's handmade, will they assume it's quality, and therefore am I happy to pay more? If the product is bespoke, the consumer knows it's once off, therefore they can be happy to pay more. If the product is free from, and a key, you know, motivation of the product is to be, you know, sustainable, that might be something. And if you're saying it's made in Ireland, it might be very important for the consumer, you know, to be buying Irish, so therefore they might say support our own. So I'm coming to the end now, and I would just say, kind of like, the craft products is perceived as having 3 components: visually attractive, functional product, the emotional product, and the value product. And all 3 are interweaving, and they impact on each other. And all 3 kind of feed into how the consumer perceives you. So that's me. That's the end of my presentation. So I kind of go back to Mary there and see.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks a million, Meabh. Yeah, no, there's just a couple of queries in, because the sound, unfortunately, was a little bit muffled, and it was kind of going in and out. Now, you could hear you, but it was just kind of like as if there was a whining noise in the background or something. I think it could be off your computer or something. I don't know what it's off, but anyway, it was just, you spoke about a pricing workshop, or a workshop to do with pricing. Would you mind just saying that again, which workshop that was, or what it is?
Yes, that was on. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, can hear you, yeah.
That was on last Wednesday, and it was run by Bernie McCoy and Tracy Gilbert and Donal Horgan. And they did a workshop last Wednesday. It's just been added to your webinar website. And they addressed specifically the pricing, the different types of pricing. Say, lots of shops will maybe have a markup of 2.5, and they broke it down about how one might do that. So hypothetically speaking, if a you know, if a throw is being sold in a retail environment for €100, 23 euros goes on that, and the remaining 76 euros is divided between the retailer and the maker. So for a product that might be sold in a retail location, the cost price to the design maker might be 40 euros. a rough guide might be 40 euros to the maker, 40 euros to the shopkeeper, and then 23% VAT to the government. But that is covered in great detail on the webinar that the Design and Crafts Council delivered last Wednesday.
Yeah, so what I can do is I'll send around a copy of your slides because people have been looking for that as well. So I could send it around, and I'll also include the link to those webinars, and they'll have links for all the pre-recorded webinars that you can look up from the Design and Crafts Council. Yeah, somebody is saying here that Stephanie McGuinness is saying a friend of hers had a similar problem before. Her computer was overheating and the fan was going into overdrive. So that's what it could be, Maeve, on your computer. Would it be? I don't know. Anyway, so we have another. Oh, there's somebody asking here. She's very curious. It's an anonymous attendee. Very curious who created your earrings. They're very elegant. Are they by an Irish designer? So your earrings, Yvonne, you made.
Yeah, they're by Mairead McCorley, and she's in Silverstone Jewellery in Middleton in Cork.
Yeah, they are. They're beautiful. Just somebody asking again about, you mentioned earlier about a brand promise. Would you mind just giving a little bit about that again? What is a brand promise?
Yes, like a product, like I'll just say this glass is a product, and the promise is I have made it. Like, I know that sounds silly, but you haven't bought it in from a third-party wholesaler. So I have made it, I have designed it. It represents whatever your ethos is. It might be, you know, heritage or history or skill. And you don't dilute it. And what I mean by you don't dilute it is you don't then the next day introduce a new line that's made by children in Burma, or you don't sell, you know, a low quality accessory in addition to your brand. So the brand promise is that I'm going to give you a well-made, well-crafted, excellent design that will. I promise you that it will last. I promise you that it was, you know, handmade. I promise you that I am contributing to the economic landscape. So it's just, it just reinforces the story that, you know, that's the reason why I've decided to go with you, because you have made it, because you have been inspired by literature, and I love literature. So they're the issues. That's the brand promise, and you break people's hearts when you disappoint them, when, you know, they figure out, oh, it's, you know, it isn't as you said, you know, I have no interest in heritage, or I have no interest in literature. So that's the kind of story. It's a very emotional feel. It's a kind of a, you buy a product, you buy a story, and you buy the value. So the brand promises the story, and, you know, it's got to be real.
Great, thanks, Maeve. Polly Doyle is asking, if your item is VAT exempt, then should I give the shop 2.5 markup? 2.5.
Okay, Polly, I don't know you, but I'll just say, what I would mean there is you have to pay an economic entity, either you, Polly, or a shop. You have to pay VAT if you have a turnover higher of 75,000. So it doesn't matter that Meabh Ring or Polly is not registered for VAT. It matters at the point of sale that the shop is registered for VAT. So the consumer will have to pay the 23% VAT, regardless of whether the maker is registered for VAT or not. Does that answer the question? The shop is the legal entity selling the product. So the shop has to collect VAT if it's doing more than 75%.
Maeve, Polly is just saying her items are...
Her items are what?
Her items are children's clothing, and the shop would not need to pay VAT.
Correct, yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize there were children's clothing. So yeah, children's clothing are exempt from VAT. So no, there's no VAT in children's clothing. That's the law. That's fine. There's no VAT there.
Okay. Now, there's an anonymous attendee just asking, could you remind me of the outlet you mentioned? Was it the London Cafe? Did you mention an outlet?
Well, the only place I mentioned was Cockpit Art Studio, and that's in London. And what that is that it is a craft collective. I think it's actually run by the Prince's Trust, and it's a physical location, Cockpit's Arts in London, where it's kind of like a hothouse for English, UK-based designers and makers and crafters. And they all live in these, well, they work in these studios. So it's kind of a craft collective. But the reason I mentioned it is that it's just helpful to look at what other people are doing and talking and describing when it comes to branding, just to have a look overseas. So that place is called Cockpit's Arts Studio, and it's based in London.
Great, thanks, Meabh. Meabh, we've Polly back here again. So she's just asking, so should she still offer the retailer 2.5 because 20% is for the VAT? So should she keep 60% and just give 40% to the shop?
It depends on the shop, right? Because there's no legal or set terms and conditions. So again, I would go back and say, you know, Tracy Gilbert's presentation, you know, goes through this. But the shop will decide what it is they're going to do. And yes, you could say, okay, the shop will get 40%, I'll get 60%. But you've got to get the shop to buy in. And if the shopkeeper goes, well, no, I can get another competitor who'll give me 50-50 as opposed to 40-60, you know, I think I'll go with them because I'll earn more money from them. So in theory, most certainly you can ask the shopkeeper, you know, can I do, you know, 40-60? But if they're already getting 50-50 from another children's wear clothing company, you might be up against them like that. So I'd say start the conversation and see how you would get on.
Great, thanks, Meabh. Sarah Rosny is asking, will there be a webinar on how to get Showcase ready? I'd like to apply for Showcase, but not sure how to go about it in the sense of amount of products needed and setting up a stand, etc. So I'm not sure about that. Do you know, Meabh? I'd have to inquire and see, can we set one up maybe or whatever?
You know, like everything, you know, it's all COVID dependent, and I'm not sure. But most certainly, if you want to go Showcase, the Design and Crafts Council, you would apply to the Design and Crafts Council for a stand, and there's training involved in that. Likewise, if you go to your local enterprise offices, each of the 31 local enterprise offices in Ireland have a number of stands that they would give to their emerging, you know, crafters and designers, and there's always a workshop on how to get ready for that. So between the Design and Crafts Council, between your local enterprise office, they won't let you go Showcase without a bit of training and mentoring, so they will look after you. So, but you know, it's all up in the air. We don't even know, you know, like Showcase is brilliant. It's the best show in Ireland. However, it's advertised to all the American buyers to come, to all the German buyers to come, and we're encouraging people not to travel unless it's essential. So that, you know, we don't know yet, but I would say watch the space, and as soon as you hear anything, contact, you know, Emer or Mary or your local enterprise office, and they'll give you a little bit of help.
Okay. Then there's just one more quick question. Any comments or suggestions on choosing an internet domain name?
I often think it's really important to do exactly what it says on the tin. So if I said I'm Meabh Ring Designs, you don't know what I am. I could be an interior designer, I could be a graphic designer. So if I said I was Meabh Ring Jewelry, I think that helps. Sometimes being nice and descriptive and functional helps. Now, they're not always available, they're not always, easy to get. So it is a challenge. There's nothing wrong with using your name, Meabh Ring, or, Dan Taylor or Mary Dunn, .com. There's nothing wrong with using that name, because it's kind of hard to rob that name, but then you have to have a very good descriptive tagline, which is, handmade contemporary Irish silver jewelry, whatever that is. But again, what I would always say to people is, look at what other people are doing, look at other designers and makers that you value, that you like, and see if, see what they've used. And you're not copying them, you've been successful in the market. Maybe I could work with them, I could learn something from them. But sometimes I just think it's great to know it's Meabh Ring handbags because she makes handbags, so I understand what she does, or it's Meabh Ring leather. So sometimes if you're too vague, the consumer just doesn't keep the attention going.
Meabh, that's it. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. We've had a lot of people thanking you very much, and they'd like to get a copy of your presentation, your slides. So I'll circulate them to all the attendees, along with the link for the previous webinars that they can have a look at. So that's great. Thank you very much for everything, Meabh. That was brilliant. Oops, sorry.
I'm so sorry the sound was bad, guys. Really, it didn't sound bad in the trial run, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's probably just the computer. We'll try and sort it anyway. We could still hear you anyway, and we could still see your slides, so it was good. Thanks very much, Meabh. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye-bye.